All right, we're live. What's up, everyone? My name is Tim Stoddard. Welcome to Tim Stodds FM. Thank you so much for joining me. It's a new year, a new decade. It is January 8th, 2020, and we got some big changes coming this year. I took some time off at the end of December. I enjoyed the holiday as best I can. I tried my best not to just completely jump right into the rat race at the early parts of the year, and instead, take a step back and try to game plan and try to reflect on exactly what it is that I wanted to do and what I want to accomplish this year. And it's amazing how when you give yourself some space to breathe, that things just kind of fall into place and happen. So with all that, the podcast is going to be an integral part of my personal brand this year, of my blog, of timstodds.com. I'm going to continue interviewing guests on my show, but I'm also going to be doing a couple solo episodes. In the past, if I didn't have time to book a guest, or maybe I was, running around doing some other things, and it was difficult for me to actually have a moment to sit down with a guest and plan everything out on Zoom, I would just kind of put the podcast on the back burner. But this year going forward, if I can't figure out how to get a guest booked on the show, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it myself, and I'm just going to kind of talk about what's going on in my life, or some things that I'm working on, or maybe some things that have been going well for my brand and for all the companies underneath it. So, all right. So today's episode, I'm sure the people who clicked on this video, you saw the title. I'm sure the people who clicked on this podcast saw the title, How I Became a Partner in Copyblogger. Wow. What a story that this is. What a story that this has been in my life. And it's a real pivotal point in my life. So where do I start with the story? I guess we have to start at the beginning, and I'm just going to go fully into it and give you all the context that you guys will need. So the year was 2010. I had just moved to South Florida. I had moved. It was the first time I'd really been out of Philadelphia. I kind of moved in with my cousin, who let me sleep on his couch more or less for the first couple of weeks. And it was during that time, it was a new chapter in my life. I was like really confused. I was in this new place. I didn't know what my future was. I was, trying to live this new way, a better way of living. And so I started a blog. I'd always been a writer. I get a lot of peace and solace from just writing and expressing my thoughts. I always say the blank page never bitches at you and never yells at you. It just kind of lets you say what you got to say. And so I went to Blogspot. For those who have been doing this as long as I have, Blogspot was kind of Google's blogging platform. So I went to Blogspot and I started blogging, and I just started writing what was going on in my life. And I honestly didn't think that hard about it. I didn't have any goals associated to it. I just would write, and I would write about my life, and I would write about my recovery and some of the new things that I was doing. And after a couple of weeks of doing that, I started. So on Blogspot, you used to have this dashboard where you could see the traffic, and so I started noticing, damn, like some people are actually starting to read my articles and are reading some of my work, and like, how are they getting there? And that was the beginning of sort of my fascination with content marketing and with online marketing, and with building online brands built around ideas and around what it is that you have to say. So after I started getting into it, and I started reading articles, and I started searching online of trying to find out things that skills that I could use to grow this blog. And that is when I found Copyblogger.com. Copyblogger is without a doubt one of the world's foremost authorities for online marketing. If you want to learn how to build a blog, if you want to learn how to build an online brand, the first thing I do when I hire people for Stodzy is I tell them to read Copyblogger every day. If you want to be a writer, if you want to be a content creator, if you want to figure out how to use content to grow a brand, to grow a business, like copyblogger.com is the place to go. So I started reading every article. It was founded by a man named Brian Clark. And Brian Clark is the CEO of Copyblogger and still is till this day. And I would just read everything. Every time they posted an article, I would read it. Every time they published a podcast, I would read it. Every ebook they published, I would read. I would take notes. But most importantly, I started really implementing this shit into my life, into my blog. And like, that's how it started. Eventually, that's how Sober Nation became such a big brand. If Copyblogger was doing it, I would instantly copy the idea. So, again, just to kind of give you some backstory, I always associated Sober Nation with Copyblogger because although the messages were different, the strategy was the same. It was basically building a brand around written content, right? Around blogging. But then Copyblogger created this website called Rainmaker FM, which is essentially a podcast network. So if you had a podcast and you were talking about entrepreneurship or growing an online company, you could be in the podcast network. You could be published on Rainmaker FM. So I copied the idea and like straight up, I just copied their shit. And that's why I created soberpodcasts.com. And that's how we built that whole podcast network around, all the recovery-based podcasts that there are. They came up with an idea called digitalcommerce.com, which was essentially creating online courses to teach people how to build companies. And they were using Copyblogger, which was essentially like the marketing machine to sell their courses. And so I did the same thing. That's why we created Sobriety Engine. We were creating these online products to help people in recovery, and we were using the audience of Sober Nation to promote these products. And so, even though they're totally different industries, like copyblogger.com is about online marketing and sobernation.com obviously is about recovery, but the strategy was exactly the same. I couldn't have been more deliberate in my just ruthless copying of what Copyblogger did and the strategies that they implemented. And that's how it started. So long story short, we're going to fast forward about 10 years. Brian Clark, again, the CEO of Copyblogger, he had this little side project. It was called Your Boulder. He lives in Boulder, Colorado. And he created in the industry, we call it a hyperlocal site. It's basically a website around like news and events and real estate and restaurants and I don't know, maybe politics or gossip, focused around what's going on in a particular city, hyper local. So he had this website called Your Boulder. And about 2 years ago, Brian Clark went on a sabbatical. He went all around Europe, I believe. I think he went to Japan and maybe Australia. He went all around the world. I'm not exactly sure. And he stopped working on Your Boulder. And I saw this. And since I'd always been such a fan of his, like I would just kind of keep up with what he was doing to get ideas, as I told you about. And I saw that he stopped working on it. And so about 10 months ago, I sort of built up some courage and I sent him an email. So mind you, Brian Clark and I talked 2 or 3 times through Twitter and through Instagram. And it was really funny because he's a real big fan of Fight Club and Tyler Durden. And I'm a huge fan of Fight Club and Tyler Durden. And so on all my social media, I don't know, what do you call them? Like the profile, the 1 or 2 sentence that you get to put at the top of your social media accounts, I would always put, "You are not your fucking khakis." It's a really brilliant, amazing Tyler Durden quote. And I guess he saw that and somehow he found me just through me interacting with him and, some of his peoples on Twitter. And he sent me a message about Tyler Durden. It was just like, it was a cool moment for me. I was like, oh shit. Like I talked to Brian Clark on Twitter. But so that was all the, familiarity that he and I had with each other. So I was really nervous to send out this email because it's Brian Clark, like he gets, who knows how many emails he gets a day from people just pitching him ideas or asking him to read something that they made or, what do you think about this? Or do you want to start this company with me? I mean, my mind was going off on all the reasons why he wouldn't care. I had that sort of self-limiting belief about the whole thing. But nonetheless, I emailed him and I said, "Hey, Brian, I've been following your site, your Boulder. I saw that you haven't published anything since 2017, I think it was the last time we did an article. So I have a lot of experience with this. I've been following you for a while. I think you should let me manage this site for you and that we should partner on it. I think you should put an online directory on it because local businesses need exposure. And if you have a hyperlocal website, you can build a directory on it." And lo and behold, I sent him an email. I sent him a plan. I sent him my pitch. And I got an email back from him like 10 minutes later that just said, "Let's talk about this." And that was it. Actually, I think it said, "Let's chat about this." And that was it. So before I knew it, the next day, I was on the phone with Brian Clark and we decided to partner up on your Boulder. And it was like a huge, huge privilege for me to be involved with that because although yourboulder.com is not even remotely close to the size of Copyblogger, it was still a moment for me to realize, like, wow, you know what you're doing, Tim. Like, obviously he's not just going to partner with some dope, right? Like, you have the skills, you have the know-how, you have the organizational thinking to be able to manage something at a scope like this. And so I went right to work. As the people that work with me a lot know, I'm really into systems. I think building systems like supplements, quote, hustle. And if you build a system and you build like a really great process around what it is that you're doing, you don't have to be constantly running around all over the place. So it's the first thing I did. Like, I put the site on a new theme. I made it look really good. I found the right people to work with. And after about 3 months of really, really working on it, I developed your Boulder into like a badass media platform. And it's growing every day. And we got new email subscribers every day. And like, it's really fucking cool. So we got a real estate directory on there now. We got a business directory on there. So the point I'm making, I'm not trying to like pitch your Boulder. I'm trying to say that it was through my work on your Boulder that Brian Clark was able to see what it is that I have to offer. Not to mention, even though I built a really good system and I came up with something that makes everybody's life easier, there was definite growth, which at the end of the day is the most important, right? Like, my work created a really good return, which is ultimately, like, I think what you want to see happen with anybody that you partner with or pitches an idea with you. So fast forward again, Brian Clark had to come to Nashville because he was speaking at an event that was being put forth by a guy named Jeff Goins. Jeff Goins is also like a pretty well-known blogger. I think he's got a podcast too, but he does most of his business through his blog. And he said, "Hey man, I'm going to be in Nashville. Let's get together for coffee." And so we did. And it was a really cool chance for me to actually sit down and meet Brian and, just sort of talk to him about my ideas for your Boulder. And we had a great chat. It was great. It was in that conversation that he told me that a guy named Daryl, who is kind of a 6 degrees thing of separation here, so I'm not going to harp on it, but I'll tell you all the relationships real quick. Daryl is partners with a guy named Brian Gardner, who was partners with Copyblogger. And there were 5 partners on Copyblogger originally. And Daryl, I believe, bought out all of them except for Brian Clark and Brian Gardner. So as of 4 or 5 months ago, I learned that this guy named Daryl, who I'm familiar with because he's part of, like the online marketing club, so to speak. And I found him and I saw some of his work. I discovered that Daryl was the one that bought out all of these partners with the exception to Clark and with the exception to Gardner. So now Copyblogger was a 3-man team. And the craziest part about it is that Daryl lives in Nashville. So Clark was telling me about this, and he said, yeah, like maybe you guys should get some coffee. So I reached out to Daryl on Twitter. I said, hey, what's up, man? I just had coffee with Clark. We call him Clark. Just had coffee with Clark, and he mentioned you, and I hear that you live in Nashville. We should get together sometime. And so we did. And about a couple months ago, we just got together and had some coffee, and he told me about some of his ideas with Copyblogger, and that was really as far as it got. You know, he asked about some of my ideas with Your Boulder. He said, man, I've always wanted to talk about or find somebody to partner with who would build like a hyper local brand around Nashville, just because Nashville is like blowing up so fast and it's such a crazy place to be right now. So it was a really cool conversation. And living in Nashville the last couple of years has been much different than living in Florida, because I don't have all of my friends here. You know, like my friends in Florida and my crew in Florida, like we all got sober together and we all hung out with each other every day, you know, and since we all kind of scattered all over the country, it's been a much different dynamic living here. So having a new, like, he's a really good friend of mine now, but even before our relationship grew, like having somebody like Daryl who was into the same things that I was into, who just kind of loved talking about building online brands and about marketing and some of the cool ideas that he had, like it felt really good for me to have somebody like that in my life that I could just kind of shoot the shit with. And so he and I would meet for coffee like once every week, once every other week or so. And eventually he didn't even tell me anything. I just was thinking about it. And I thought to myself, man, I wonder how much Gardner is still emotionally invested into Copyblogger. Again, giving a little bit of context, like Gardner is not a marketer in the same way that Clark is. Gardner is a designer. Gardner is really like a legend because he created this company called Studio Press, which is basically a place where you could buy themes. Like a theme is something that you can put onto a website so that you don't have to design it, right? Like you don't have to hire a designer. You can just upload a theme and then like, bam, you have a well-designed functional website. And Studio Press is probably the most successful, you know, theme store that has ever been created. And so again, they would use Copyblogger, which was like the media machine behind it, to sell some of these Studio Press themes. And it was hugely successful. And so I knew that Gardner wasn't a marketer in the same way that Clark was. I knew that Gardner was a designer simply because like I would read Brian Gardner's blog and like I knew what he was into. So eventually I was sitting on the couch one night and Jules and I were watching, I don't remember, maybe we were watching The Prophet or something like that because we love Marcus Lemonis because he's a fucking gangster. But I shot Daryl a text message, just said, hey man, was thinking about it. What do you think? I said, how would you feel about having a conversation about me purchasing some partnership stake in Copyblogger? And and fucking bam. So turns out that Gardner was completely open to it. In fact, I think he welcomed the idea, and it happened really fast. So when I was in Philly for Christmas, almost 2 weeks ago now, I went to the bank and I got over some paperwork and I signed it and I wired over some money. And just like that, me, Tim Stoddard, is a partner in copyblogger.com. And it's a real moment for me to say that. It's a real dream come true because it's not just that it's a really cool opportunity for me. It's more so a personal success story for me because 10 years ago, like on my personal brand, I talk about my recovery and my sobriety from time to time, but I don't really get into it, especially because I know that there's a lot of professionals that see me here, and I don't want everybody to kind of see me in that light, right? But I'll take the moment to really talk about it here because 10 years ago, I was like basically homeless. I was ridiculously malnourished. I had nothing going for me. I had no education. Like I was I was worthless, completely worthless. So much so that we had to just ship me out of the state of Pennsylvania because there was nothing else for me there, and I had to go sleep on my cousin's couch. And through Copyblogger, I built myself up a day at a time, and through, obviously, what goes without mentioning, all the help from the people around me that love me and the people that I found in Florida that helped me along the way. But nonetheless, I put in a lot of work through Copyblogger, through reading these articles, through getting these resources, through practicing, through experimenting with some of the shit that I would learn on Copyblogger. And the website changed my life. You know, like it was my education. The only way I learned how to be a good entrepreneur and a good web marketer is through Copyblogger. There's other blogs that I read, obviously, but like it was my education, and I owe a lot of my success and even not just success, but like a lot of my fulfillment, just because I love the work that I do. A lot of my self-esteem came from that website, because finally I found something where I was just like, I can do this. I can build an audience around my ideas and around what it is that I have to say. And I can take that audience and I can build a company out of it. And I can serve people through my message. And I can come up with things that help people and deliver it to them because they trust me, because they already know what it is that I represent, because I took the time out of my life to write it and to create that content. So it's come full circle. 10 years later, I'll have 10 years sober on March 4th, which is a little less than 2 months from now. And through 10 years of this entire journey of me being a fan first of Copyblogger and me being a practitioner of what it is that I learned, I was able to be in a position where I could legitimately be part of the management team. And that's like just such a huge honor for me. It's such a great experience in my life. It's something that I'm very proud of. And it's something that I'm still kind of pinching myself on. Yeah. So there's my story. If you want to learn more, go to copyblogger.com. My first blog post is published as of this morning. Actually, let me check to see. For those listening on the podcast, I'm also kind of live streaming this. So if you hear some typing, yeah, so it's not published yet, but I believe in an hour or two, my first blog post is going to be published on the site. It's going to be sent out through email to the ridiculously huge email list that Copyblogger has, and it's going to really be a big thing for me. I'm humbled. I'm honored. I'm so excited. I'm extremely motivated. I feel so grateful for Copyblogger and for all the other amazing things I have going on in my life. You know, this isn't going to change how I feel about Journey Pure, especially, which is my biggest focus right now and has been over the last year. You know, I'm so fucking grateful to be involved with those people there, and they teach me so much and they challenge me every day. And it's like the first time I felt really challenged in this way in a long time. So it's not going to change what I got going on over there. It's not going to change my mission. It's not going to change my blog. I'm still going to show up for everybody that follows me and all my email subscribers and all that. But, you know, this is the beginning of something remarkable for me. And I hope that you will follow me on my journey. And I invite you all to reach out to me and ask me any questions and just really be a part of it. All right. I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys listening to me. We're going to get these podcasts rocking every week now. So like I said, I might not have an interview each week, but I will have something to say each week because I actually, believe it or not, get a lot of requests from people saying like, hey man, where's your podcast been? I haven't heard it in a while. So I take that seriously, and I'm going to add that. I'm going to be more mindful of that going forward. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you later. Peace.